Talbot Lago T23 Teardrop Coupe par Figoni and Falaschi 1938. 115 bhp, 3,996 cc inline 6-cylinder engine with hemispherical combustion chambers and twin carburetors, Wilson 4-speed pre-selector gearbox, independent front suspension with transverse leaf spring, liver ear axle with semi-elliptic leaf springs and 4-wheel drum brakes. Wheelbase, 116.14 inches. The sole G-Kart style, 4-liter Talbot Lago T23 Teardrop Coupe built. One of 5 G-Kart style cars built in one of the 4 examples remaining. A former Pebble Beach Elegance and Motion winner. Expertly restored and properly sorted for fast driving, as originally intended. The Talbot Lago Teardrop by Figoni et Falaschi, the pinnacle of pre-war elegance. Without doubt, the Talbot Lago Teardrop Coupes by Figoni et Falaschi represent the crowning achievement of French design and engineering during the 1930s. It is believed that just 16 teardrops were built in total, in 2 slightly different body styles. The first car in the G-Kart design, after the name of its first owner, was a beautiful, aerodynamic coupe with a long, streamlined rear end treatment. Only 5 such cars were built and, of those, just 4 remain today. This car, chassis 93,064, was the sole G-Kart style teardrop originally built upon a 4-liter, T23 baby chassis. The other 11 teardrop coupes were built in the New York style, named after the car exhibited at the 1937 New York Auto Salon. Except for 1 car on a T23 chassis, these New York cars were all based upon the shorter T150C chassis. While hardly a long wheelbase chassis by the standards of the coach-built era, the effect of the 2.95-meter wheelbase of the T23 chassis, combined with the Figoni teardrop coachwork, is simply breathtaking. Blessed with a physical presence unlike many of its counterparts, the slightly wider track of 93,064 gives it a very balanced and particularly sporting stance. Existing records indicate that 93,064 was ordered as a baby 4 liters chassis with style 9221 model G-Kart coachwork, which was built by Figoni et Falaschi as job number FF685. Following completion, it was delivered on February 21, 1938 to a French resident registered as 199-8075. Predictably, its exceptional beauty made it prominent at period Concours events, with contemporary magazines showing it in the company of a striking woman at its first showing at the Concours d'Elegance de l'Auto in June 1938. Chassis 93,064 made its way to Southern California during the late 1940s, having likely been imported by a returning member of the American Armed Services. At this time, David Radensky, a Denver, Colorado native, acquired the teardrop. He later sold the car to machinist Paul Major, who for many years was seen driving the car in the Denver, Colorado area. At this point, the headlights had been recessed into the front fenders, and the taillights were now flush-mounted with the rear fenders. Sometime in the mid-1950s, the trafficators ceased to work, prompting Major to add turn signals at the tops of the head and tail light housings. Bumpers from a pre-war Cadillac were also fitted to the car. Under Major's ownership, 93,064 was featured and photographed for an article in Rocky Mountain Auto Life, written by Ronald C. Hill, a friend of Major's. According to Hill, Major offered the car at auction in September 1966 at Arthur Rippey's Veteran Car Museum, although it appears to have remained unsold. It was again offered at the same venue in November 1967, this time selling to a buyer in Atlanta, Georgia, believed to have been named Milbank. In the early 1970s, Mr. Milbank shipped 93,064 to Paris for restoration by noted French coach builder Henri Chaperon, and it made its post-restoration debut in Paris upon completion in 1974. During the restoration, the car was returned to its original colors and several small touches were added. The headlights were modified slightly, the rear directional signals were removed, and the bumpers were changed to the more appropriate single blade style. At some point in the late 1980s, 93,064 was purchased by a Japanese collector and remained there until its next owner, Mr. Charles Morse, returned it to America. Soon after Mr. Morse received the car, the engine and mechanicals were restored. A body off-frame restoration was deemed unnecessary, but the cosmetics were freshened with new paint and interior. In 2000, the Teardrop received the Elegance in Motion Award at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. Prior to selling 93,064 to John M. O'Quinn in early 2006, Mr. Morse reported to RM Auctions that the race-bred Talbot Lago chassis and powertrain, combined with the lightweight Figoni at Falaschi Teardrop Coupe coachwork, resulted in an exquisite driving experience. He also noted that the unassisted steering was surprisingly quick and light, and that the Wilson pre-selector gearbox was smoother than a conventional manual gearbox, with positive coupling and quick gear changes. In Mr. Morse's ownership, the 4-liter engine was adapted to Winfield carburetors for improved throttle response and a border power band. Mr. Morse extensively toured the Talbot just as it was originally intended, and following its second running on the Colorado Grand, the noted mechanic and restorer, Mr. Jim Sternberg, rebuilt the Talbot's steering mechanism and front suspension. A road test around this time revealed the Talbot to have been in excellent operating order. Next, the Teardrop was shipped to Expert Restores Carrosserie Tessier in France, who undertook a complete body off-frame restoration with virtually no expense spared. The body's wooden substructure was carefully examined and repaired, with an estimated 80% of the original woodwork saved and preserved. The flowing sheet metal was extensively repaired as well, with an estimated 90% of the original metalwork remaining. New front and rear bumpers were installed as the prior units had become separated from the car at some point, and new front lights were also installed. The chassis and mechanical components were fully restored, including a full engine overhaul, which retained all original engine parts except for a new set of pistons. At this time, the somewhat difficult Winfield carburetors were replaced with period Solex units, more in keeping to the original specification of the car. The interior upholstery was completely restored to original specification, and the stunning exterior was refinished in Lago blue, the same color it wore when it was displayed at the Concours d'Elegance de l'Auto in 1938.